But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Going straight to our dailies this morning, but let's welcome the General Editor of Daily Trust newspaper, Hamza Idris, in the studio. Good morning,
Good
sir.
morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine.
We're fine, I'm fine. We're happy to have you around.
Thank you.
All right. Let's take a look at some of the stories here below the nameplate. The first story you would see on page 38 says 37 days after, Buhari yet to appoint new ministers from Kano and Taraba. You'd also see scores killed, houses burnt as gunmen attack Zamfara village. There you would also see the lead story saying IPOP killings, FG malls, state of emergency in Anambra. This is ahead of the election coming up in the state. We'll be looking at much more on that later on the program. You'll see also Malami confirmed our worst fears. That's according to the state governors. APC planning to rig the PDPs, they're saying. Take order to Zamfara. Katsina Abga says they are living in the past. That's according to the ruling party. You would see also the picture there showing you corps members distributing food items to pupils of LEA Primary School, Jahi, during an outreach in Abuja. Beside that, Biafra agitation madness. Countergroups likely, Umahi. You'd also find Nigeria others to benefit as Google invests 410 billion naira in Africa's digital transformation. FG to borrow 6.258 trillion naira to finance 2022 budget. Below that, mixed reactions as NCC sets 18-year age limit for SIM ownership, others in draft regulation. That's that on the Daily Trust newspaper.
Okay, let's move on to the Punch newspaper today. Right at the top, we have Nigeria lost 221.64 billion in July to oil production stoppages. That's according to the NNPC. We also have federal government considers taking states to state court over VAT saga, Supreme Court rather. Anambra killings, PDP alleges rigging plot. Obiano kicks as federal government mulls emergency rule. And the big headline right there is high budget deficit. Don't harm our future. Experts warn government. Federal government plans more loans. And the writer says Naira fall further. Inflation will rise. Debt servicing will worsen. That's according to experts. Government will continue to borrow to finance projects. No money, says minister. And we have right there, everywhere I go, I'm asked to contest 2023 presidential seat. That's according to Kalu. IBEDC throws communities into darkness. Residents scare officials with sacrifice. And we also have court summons Fani Kayode's ex-wife over alleged document falsification. Female ex-NIS officer arrested for scamming job seekers, collecting 34 million. And below that, we have Lagos-Abeokuta Highway. Protesters threaten to ground Ogun, issue 21-day ultimatum. 2 Randi Ekiti men remanded for scaling fence, raping 16-year-old in mother's room. Terrible indeed. We also have can reconstitute prayer panel against killings, kidnappings, others.
All right, let's take a look at The Nation this morning. On The Nation newspaper, the first story at the top, petrol landing cost hits 264 naira per litre. You'd find state of emergency likely in Anambra. Sanwo-Olu ex-governors eulogize Ndubisi Kanu. Protest in Ogun over Abeokuta Lagos road. The lead story on The Nation newspaper, Minister Government will borrow to fund 6.2 trillion naira budget deficit. You'd find the writer saying revenue not enough for critical projects. Buhari presents 16.39 trillion estimates today. House seeks review of judges' salary. You would see also below the picture there, showdown likely at PDP NEC meeting over zoning. These are some of the major stories on the nation today.
Okay, let's take a look at this day newspaper. Right at the top, Arise News to facilitate availability of new sickle cell drug in Nigeria. That's quite a breakthrough, isn't it? Then U.S. malls release of emergency reserves to curb rising oil prices. History as World Health approves world's first malaria vaccine. We need that right now. Looking at the state of death that we record because of malaria in the country, or in Africa, would I say. Now, federal government considers emergency rule in Anambra to protect electoral process. And the writer is saying counter groups likely in southeast against IPOB, says Omahi. APGA, PDP, SA, MEA disagree with Malami. Afenifere describes consideration as self-indicting. Falana, emergency rule does not empower president to remove governor. And below that, we have federal government will borrow to finance 6.258 trillion naira 2022 proposed budget deficit.
All right, let's take a look at the Blueprint newspaper this morning. And on the Blueprint newspaper, you'd find the first story there below the nameplate. Horse riding bandits kill 18 in Zamfara. 10 slain in Katsina. Okay, so from camels, we're now moving to horses. So
It looks like we're going back to the
means
traditional.
that they are circumventing the policy of government to stop the sale of fuel, for more than 10,000 naira. You cannot buy fuel and all of that. So this is them saying, okay,
We can
if you
counter
deny
this.
us vehicles, we can go back to the olden days using camels and horses. But then one wonders, how do they get these horses and camels? Again, that's another question for us to figure out. You'd see below the nameplate again, residents discover killing field close to FCT minister's quarters. Wow. You'd find also shift to digital financial services will encourage competition, attract more fintech. Niger, kingmakers affirm Barrow Kontagora Emir. American expert wants U.S. to declare IPOP terrorist. The lead story on the Blueprint says Anambra Goba. PDP cries foul as FG considers state of emergency. The writer there says we have a responsibility to ensure democratic order. Malami. Perish the thoughts. It's ploy to rig poll. Olobodiyan Abga. You'd see also Ohaneze cautions military on escalation of violence. You'd find all of that on page 6. Below the pictorial, you would find Buhari presents 16.39 trillion naira 2022 budget today, targets 10.13 trillion revenue. Those are some of the major stories you could find on the Blueprint newspaper.
Okay, I think it's about time for us to look at some of the stories on our daily, starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. Now, the big headline there is saying IPOP killings, federal government more state of emergency in Anambra. Now, looking at the whole, insecurity situation in that state, can you wrap our heads around, the scenario?
Yes, you see, emergency entails extraordinary measures. Simple. What the minister said yesterday was that since the elections just around the corner, November 6th, and threats left, right, and center, he said there will be vacuum. They will explore the state of emergency option. So people should ask, what is it? In the past, I think we misconstrued the meaning of state of emergency. Going back to 2004 in Plateau, and then 2006 in Ekiti, during the time of former President Olusegun Obasanjo. When state of emergency was declared, then the governors were removed. But later, lawyers went to court, and then they cited Section 308 of the Nigerian Constitution. It says you can have a state of emergency via a proclamation and then the approval by the National Assembly. And if the president succeeds in getting the consent of the National Assembly, meaning he can deploy troops, more troops, to ensure there is peace so that governance will continue. So in summary, what we are expecting in Anambra, if what the Attorney General said in essence is that if violence continues, it means they will deploy more troops. But I don't foresee them removing the governor. And then elections must hold across the state.
Now, talking about deployment, of troops, the police they just deployed a new commissioner, after the deadly gun attacks to that state. Do you think this will change anything?
Hopefully, because sometimes if you have a change, most likely the new helmsman will go with fresh ideas to address some of the issues on ground. It's just like we journalists. If you live in Abuja, the likelihood is that you might not see some good news. But if you travel to Kaduna, or you go to Kogi, or you go to Lagos, you realize that lots of stories. Yeah, unlike reporters that are on ground there. It is the same thing. So the new commissioner of police will most likely deploy other methods to change the trend. But you can see it is politics at play, fireworks. PDP saying one thing, Abga saying another.
I mean, just like we're seeing the story that the blueprint is leading with. PDP cries foul as FG considers state of emergency. I mean, they are already thinking in the line of, oh, okay, this is a plan to rig the election and all of that. So bringing out the issue of trust here, in the system to, do the needful in times like this.
They have right. Yes, they have right to suspect. Yes, they have right to suspect, because what they are saying is, if you consider happenings in other parts of the country or neighboring states, the killings going on in Imo, in Abia, there are more than what you have in Anambra. It is just in the last few days that you have increased killings in Anambra. Even the Commissioner for Information, what he said yesterday was that up till now, these wanton killings, you have about 15. But he admitted that yes, being one of the safest states in Nigeria, and then they have recorded up to 15 different incidents of killings is on the high side, but that should not justify the declaration of state of emergency. The ruling party in Anambra, they said, look, go and impose state of emergency in Katsina. Go and do that in Zamfara. Go and do that in Benue. Go and do that in Kogi, Kaduna. They mentioned about 7 states that the federal government should do that, not in Anambra, because they feel that declaring the state of emergency will give the ruling party the luxury to rig. Yes. Okay.
Now, there seem to be concerns about escalation as a result of the deployment of the military. In that zone. Is that a justifiable concern?
I think there is the need to restore peace, because peace is priceless, but you should do that with sincerity of purpose, not on ad hoc basis. Because we are going to have election in Anambra does not mean that the powers of the governor should be usurped completely. Yes, but people should be able to go out and vote in an atmosphere of freedom. Not only in Anambra, it's an off-season election, meaning the government should be able to mobilize enough resources to secure the lives of the people. But beyond that, we have issues in other places. You just read one of the headlines in the papers where miscreants, terrorists, using horses to wreak havoc. So government should see the entirety of Nigeria that it needs emergency.
Right.
Yes, this is
all right. Another issue is about the presentation of the 2022 budget by the President at the National Assembly today. I mean, there are already concerns about, the borrowings that could now take place based on the proposals that we've seen, over 6 trillion naira. And the government is saying that we have to borrow for us to be able to finance capital projects and all of that. How much are you concerned about the borrowings that we've been, making?
We're all concerned, especially the usage. Yes, every country around the world borrows. Even the advanced economies, like the United States, they borrow. But what they do with the money they get is quite different from what obtains here. You look at budget performance, in most cases in other places it is 100%, meaning whatever the president, the governor, local government chairman or county leader projected before the end of the year, you must have to execute it, since the budget corresponds with the money, including what you borrow. But here, the budget performance tends to be disappointing, and then you can see people are not keen in even watching budget presentations by the president, by the governors, because it has turned to a ritual, just simple ritual that, okay, every year we will present the budget. Maybe when he reviews the performance of the 2020 budget, we will see how far. Is it up to 50%, 60, 70? And then is it ongoing projects, or some of the projects have been concluded? Besides, government must borrow. This is the fact, because you can't just not borrow to provide basic services.
Now, the minister is saying that the revenue Nigeria is generating is not enough to fund or to pilot some of these capital projects. What do you think about that?
Well, she's telling the truth, and the fact is we ran a mono economy for a very long time. We were deceived by the oil. Yes, and then the prices collapsed. Today, you said, is World Cutting Day. In the past, if you go to Kaduna around this time, you will be very happy to see hundreds of, people working in the cutting mills, textile industries. If you go to Funtua, you see people going to the granary. While traveling, you see the plantation there. We have the arable land. We up till now we have it, but we refuse to harness it. People still farm cutting using the manual method, which is
Insufficient.
well, good. So, assuming the economy is vibrant, meaning we expand to farming, IT, you understand, we will generate more money. So we can't continue to borrow, because by the time you reach the threshold, nobody will give you money. So meaning what we are borrowing now, we should invest it heavily in infrastructure that will facilitate other sectors maybe in the coming years to support the running of the economy.
All right, we have to end the review here. We have in the studio the General Editor of Daily Trust newspaper, Hamza Idris, who has been giving us his thoughts on some of the stories that made the headlines. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. All right, we will take a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the issues of insecurity in Anambra State ahead of the governorship election. And we will be having joining us Festus Okoye, the National Commissioner Voter Education, in the studio right here. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that